the heart of a remote star system, far from the crowded trade routes and the watchful eyes of Terran authorities, lay the planet known as Zalos. Its surface boasted a lush rainforest of colossal trees, each trunk thick enough to shelter a battalion. The canopy towered so high that most visitors felt dizzy at the mere thought of gazing upward. Drifting mists of emerald hue shrouded the environment, lending it a mysterious, near mystical aura. Many had traveled to Zalos seeking wonders or riches, but few left unscathed, for this world demanded respect from all who walked its soil. Tyr Adana, a soldier of human descent, arrived with a small reconnaissance unit tasked with surveying the planet. Their orders were simple on paper, yet complicated by nature: explore the region, confirm no hostile forces lurked, and if possible, establish a forward base for future negotiations. The Terran High Council believed that Zalos held tremendous value. If an alliance could be forged with the locals, the planet's unique flora and rare crystalline structures might prove invaluable. But Tyr had reservations. He had seen enough worlds manipulated by greedy powers to know that alliances meant little if trust was absent. He was a disciplined soldier, yes, but not without empathy, and not without a heart open to the unknown. On the day destiny beckoned, thick vines and swirling mists cloaked Tyr's position as he scouted the perimeter. He was deep in the rainforest, far from the encampment. Treading carefully, he advanced through the undergrowth, mindful of every rustling leaf, every scurrying creature beneath the tangled roots. Then came the explosion, a violent detonation that shattered the calm. It ignited the air with a searing flash, sending debris and shards of alien plant life whirling through the gloom. Tyr had but a second to throw himself to the ground, heart hammering, as the shockwave rattled every bone in his body. In the aftermath, the rainforest emitted a strange hush, as though the land held its breath in fear. Leaves and strange neon petals drifted down like rain. Their glimmer in the half-light only accentuated the world's surreal quality. Tyr blinked, shaking his head. He tried to contact his unit over his comm device, but the only response was the grating static of interference. The transmissions had likely been scrambled by the blast, or perhaps by something else. For an instant, he considered retreating to find safety and regroup with any surviving comrades. But the soldier in him insisted on investigating. He stepped forward, scanning the area through his visor, searching for the source of the chaos. The acrid scent of scorched earth and burning vegetation hung in the air, guiding Tyr through the twisted maze of flora. It led him to a ravaged clearing, where the massive roots of ancient trees interlaced like muscular limbs across the ground. Bioluminescent veins glowed faintly along the roots, painting the forest in ghostly blue light. Among these roots, he spotted scattered metallic debris that seemed to belong to some advanced craft. The wreckage flickered with small sparks, as though the device, or vessel, had been recently destroyed. He knelt to examine a shard of twisted metal, noticing alien symbols etched into its surface. Then, from the edge of his hearing came a soft cry, so weak and pitiable that it nearly went unnoticed. Immediately, he tensed, scanning the vicinity with caution. The sound repeated, a muffled whimper carried on the hush of the wounded forest. Tyr's instincts, honed by years of service and tempered by a willingness to care, urged him toward the source. The soldier within him knew it could be dangerous, a trap, yet his moral compass demanded he proceed. Stepping quietly among the glowing ferns that obscured his view, pushing aside the thick fronds, Tyr discovered a small fox-like creature curled at the base of a gargantuan root. Its fur shimmered in the faint bioluminescence, reflecting shades of silver and midnight blue. An open wound near its flank bled with an iridescent hue, unusual and strikingly bright. The creature stared up at him through luminous eyes, golden as molten metal. Tyr's breath caught, for behind the pain, behind the animalistic features, lay an undeniable spark of intelligence. Although Tyr was not a trained xenobiologist, he had encountered many alien species throughout his deployments. None, however, had struck him as deeply as this being. Something in the trembling figure tugged at his humanity. He carefully lowered his weapon, raised empty hands to show no threat, and spoke in gentle tones. "Easy," he whispered, voice soft. "I won't hurt you." The fox-like form quivered, letting out a faint whine, a cry that resonated with emotion beyond mere animal fear. The clearing had grown quiet, as though the rainforest paused in respectful hush. Tyr knelt slowly, retrieving a compact field medkit from his belt. The creature's keen eyes followed his every movement, equal parts terror and need swirling within. Tyr had only limited knowledge of alien physiology, but he would try his best to stem the bleeding. His fingers brushed the strange fur, feeling a peculiar electric tingle that defied logic. It might have been the creature's natural defense mechanism, or some deeper, more mysterious force. As he began cleaning and dressing the wound, the fox, like being flinched, occasionally letting out small hisses of pain that sounded almost like words in a language he did not recognize. Tyr apologized quietly, aware that this might be the first gentle contact the creature had experienced in a very long time. Overhead, the shattered canopy revealed fragments of sky where Zalos's twin moons floated, their pale radiance transforming the clearing into a realm of enchanted light. The moment threatened to linger, but the rumble of distant machines jarred Tyr's senses. He froze, then glanced upward, scanning through the treetops. Soon, the silhouettes of sleek aircraft passed overhead. Their outlines suggested advanced technology, certainly more refined than standard Terran designs. Tyr felt the injured creature stiffen at the sound, as though to confirm his suspicions. The golden eyes flicked upward as well, shining with unmistakable alarm. That was all he needed to know. "They're looking for you," he said under his breath. The fox like being whined again, pressing itself closer to him. Tyr could sense fear emanating from the creature, a fear so potent it radiated off its body like heat. The soldier's mind raced. He had to find cover, secure the area, and ensure the safety of this strange life form. If those aircraft were hostile, or if they belonged to whomever had caused the explosion, staying put would mean capture, or worse. Gently, Tyr gathered the creature into his arms, mindful of the wound. The creature's fur felt warm against his battlesuit, an eerie energy thrumming just beneath his hands. He weighed his options quickly, then chose to move deeper into the rainforest, away from the crash site, away from the prying eyes of those patrols. The shifting shadows and luminescent flora became his allies, concealing him as he navigated the labyrinth of vines and roots. Step by cautious step, he carried the wounded fox like being in silence, adrenaline fueling his every decision. At length, he found a camouflaged cave half hidden by a curtain of bioluminescent vines. He parted them carefully, verifying that nothing lurked inside. Satisfied, he laid the trembling creature onto a bed of soft moss, a small measure of relief washing over him. "We should be safe here," he murmured, though even as he said it, he felt the precariousness of their situation. For a time, Tyr busied himself with reinforcing their temporary shelter. He placed motion sensors at the cave entrance, set to trigger a silent alert if anything approached. When he turned back, he found the creature watching him with unwavering focus. The golden eyes, so striking, so full of sentient awareness, traced his every movement. He swallowed, uncertain how to proceed. The hush of the rainforest outside, broken only by distant mechanical hums, added to the tension. "You're more than what you seem, aren't you?" Tyr said at last, his voice echoing slightly against the cave walls. "Somebody wants you, and I suspect it's not because you're just another animal." The fox like being tilted its head, the pointed ears twitching at his words. Tyr sensed a subtle shift in the atmosphere, as though the cave itself vibrated. He thought perhaps his mind was playing tricks, or the adrenaline had yet to fade. But then, a voice resonated in his head, gentle and melodic. "Please, do not be afraid." He nearly stumbled backward, heart pounding. The creature had not moved its mouth, yet he had heard words as clearly as if someone stood beside him. The golden eyes watched him intently, shining with an inner fire. Tyr felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. This world, this being, was more extraordinary than he had ever imagined. Summoning his courage, he placed a hand against the mossy floor to steady himself. Did you just speak?" he asked, eyes darting around the cave, searching for any sign that he might be hallucinating. The answer came not in spoken words, but in a gentle mental caress. The directness of it startled him, as though someone had reached out and lightly brushed the corners of his thoughts. "Yes." The simple reply carried an undercurrent of apology and gratitude. "It is the only way I can communicate when I am in this form." Tyr blinked, trying to reconcile the surreal experience. "Who are you?" he managed, softly. The fox like being lifted its head, pain still evident in its posture. "My name is Zara Melyn." Her mental tone quivered, as though it cost her effort to maintain the connection. "And I am not merely an inhabitant of this world. I am royal." Even in his shock, Tyr caught the significance of that word. Royal. The notion clashed with every preconceived idea he had of a fox-like animal. Yet, here she was, wounded, telepathic, and claiming a noble lineage. He forced himself to breathe evenly, to remain calm. "Royal," he repeated, glancing at the metallic debris in the clearing beyond. "Then that wreckage, was it your transport?" She shut her eyes, as though recalling a traumatic memory. Then, with a strained flicker of telepathic energy, conveyed impressions to him, a glimpse of an elegant starship, swirl-patterned architecture, and a distinct crest shaped like a swirling flame. All of it dashed to pieces by a violent ambush. Zara's mental presence radiated deep sorrow. "They destroyed it," she sent. "The Council's hunters. They want me gone, so they can seize power." Understanding snapped into focus. Tyr recalled the explosion, the menacing ships overhead. A coup, perhaps. A conspiracy. The soldier in him recognized the signs. "You're in danger," he concluded, voice tight. "And now I'm in danger too." Zara's muzzle dipped in a subtle nod, though her mental voice rang with gratitude. "I am sorry. I did not wish to drag anyone else into this, but you saved my life. I owe you a debt I cannot repay." Tyr exhaled, running a hand through his short-cropped hair. "If there's a coup and a council behind it, I suspect they're serious. We need to get you somewhere safe. My orders were to explore, but it looks like fate has handed me a different mission." Zara's eyes glimmered. She tried to stand, but stumbled in pain. Immediately, Tyr was at her side, supporting her gently. The contact brought another wave of that electric tingle, passing between them like a living current. "Easy there," he murmured. "Your wound won't heal if you push too hard." She blinked, panting softly. "I can change form," she managed. "But not while I am this injured. It takes energy, power that I don't have at the moment." He nodded. "Then conserve your strength. Let me do the heavy lifting. We'll move at nightfall. Avoid patrols. Find a path out of this rainforest." Outside, the forest continued to hum with hidden life. Strange creatures glided on translucent wings, their bodies adorned with luminescent stripes. Every so often, mechanical drones zipped by overhead, scanning the terrain, searching for a sign of Zara. But Tyr's sensors remained silent, the cave concealing them from detection. Over the hours, soldier and alien royalty shared cautious conversation in mental fragments, building a fragile rapport. Night descended quickly on Zalos. The darkness brought with it new forms of luminescence. As Tyr led Zara through the dense forest, vines sparkled like stardust, forming living constellations in the branches. The injured princess leaned on him heavily, each step a risk. Yet her will burned brightly, fueling her determination. She had to survive, to thwart the conspiracy that threatened her people. Their journey lasted several hours, slow and tense. At times, they paused to let search parties drift past, the whir of engines too close for comfort. Tyr's heart pounded each time, uncertain whether his camouflage measures would suffice. But Zara's telepathy assisted them. Her senses extended into the minds of the patrol pilots, detecting their proximity in time to hide or remain absolutely still. Each close call sent adrenaline crashing through Tyr's veins, but they persevered. Eventually, they found a small waterfall cascading down a cluster of rocks. The glow of phosphorescent moss illuminated the water, making it look like liquid moonlight. "Let's rest here," Tyr said quietly, lowering Zara onto a smooth, flat stone. The fox-like creature sighed, her golden eyes tired yet resolute. Tyr quickly scouted the area, verifying no sign of immediate pursuit. He then returned with a container of water, offering it to Zara. She drank gratefully, though her muzzle remained stained with that strange, shimmering blood. "Thank you," she managed telepathically. "I appreciate your kindness. It has been a long time since anyone has shown me such mercy." Tyr shifted uncomfortably. "It's just decency," he replied. "Doesn't matter if you're human or alien royalty. If someone's wounded, I can't just walk away." Her eyes softened. The bond they were forging was tenuous, yet genuine, bridging the gap between species, between soldier and princess. They spoke of the palace she had fled, the father she had left behind, and the council that sought her demise. She shared glimpses of her culture, a proud civilization built around the harmonious interplay of mind and energy. The telepathy that Zara possessed was only one facet of her people's potential. They channeled power through specialized crystals, lived in symbiosis with the living forests and mountains, and treasured unity above all else. Or so they had, until a faction within their leadership embraced darker aspirations. In turn, Tyr confessed fragments of his own life. Not all humans were kindly explorers. He had participated in campaigns on distant worlds, seen cruelty inflicted upon native species by his own superiors. He had grown, disillusioned, longing for a mission that served a higher purpose than exploitation. Now, fate had delivered him to Zalos. The more he learned from Zara, the more determined he became to help her, to thwart the betrayal that threatened to tear her world apart. Their respite was cut short when a drone buzzed overhead, scanning the waterfall. Tyr pressed himself into the shadows, motioning Zara to be silent. For agonizing seconds, the drone hovered, its searchlights piercing through the swirling mist. Then, with a burst of propulsion, it moved on, leaving them unscathed. Tyr felt his pulse drumming in his ears. "We need to keep moving," he whispered. As they departed, the forest seemed to shrink around them, illuminated only by patches of moonlight that broke through the canopy. Strange calls echoed in the distance, the cries of nocturnal predators. The tension grew with each step, yet they pressed onward, drawn by an unspoken sense of urgency. Zara leaned heavily on Tyr, her wound still fresh. The soldier wondered how much longer she could maintain her current form, or if it might be wiser for her to attempt the transformation she mentioned. When dawn's light began to stain the sky in bands of lavender and gold, they stumbled upon a hidden grove. The trees here formed a circular clearing, their trunks wrapped in luminous vines. At the center rose a stone altar carved with intricate alien runes. The entire space radiated a calm, ancient presence, like a holy sanctuary untouched by the corruption of mortal affairs. Zara sighed, relief permeating her mental voice. "This place," she sent, "is an elder site, a sanctuary of my ancestors. If I rest here, if I gather my strength, I may be able to shift to my true form." Tyr helped her settle at the foot of the altar. "Will that help us?" he asked, scanning the tree line for potential threats. She nodded, her ears drooping from exhaustion. "In my true form, I can better resist the council's psychic trackers. I can heal faster. Perhaps we can even call upon an older power within these stones to cloak us, to keep us hidden." The idea seemed worth pursuing. Tyr knelt beside her. "What do you need me to do?" he asked, determined to see this through. Zara closed her eyes, her tail brushing against the moss. "Let me focus. Stay near. If I falter, I may need you to keep me safe," he consented, taking up a defensive position near the altar, weapon at the ready. Though hoping earnestly he would not need to use it, moments ticked by. Each minute felt like an hour. The wind whispered among the vines. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The runes on the altar faintly glowed, responding to Zara's presence. Tyr watched, fascinated, as threads of luminescent energy traced across the stone, drawn to her shimmering, silvery blue fur. The wound in her flank still glistened, but slowly, the flow of blood began to ease, as if the sanctuary itself was aiding in her recovery. Then came a ripple in the air, a faint distortion. Tyr felt his head grow light, as though a distant call reverberated within his mind. He glanced at Zara, noticing the fox-like shape begin to shimmer. The edges of her form blurred, merging with swirling light. He gripped his rifle, uncertain whether an external force threatened them. But he soon realized it was Zara's own power. She was changing, fulfilling the promise she had mentioned. Slowly, the fox-like body elongated, limbs shifted, the muzzle retracted, fur receded in some areas, while in others, it coalesced into graceful patterns that adorned an emerging humanoid figure. Tyr found himself breathless as the transformation completed, revealing a tall, slender female with fox-like ears, a long, voluminous tail, and the same golden eyes that had so captured his empathy before. Her skin bore swirling, iridescent markings that pulsed with life. She stood with regal poise, yet a hint of vulnerability, for the wound remained, albeit sealed by an otherworldly glow. Zara Melyn looked upon Tyr, her gaze brimming with unspoken gratitude. She raised a hand, watching the faint ripple of energy flow between her palm and the ancient altar. "So much is clearer now," she whispered telepathically, though her lips also parted in speech, producing a gentle voice audible in the air. "My father taught me the old ways when I was a child. My people once believed these altars to be living connections to the spirit of Zalos. Perhaps it remains true, despite himself." Tyr's heart pounded as though he faced a fierce foe. "You can speak out loud," he managed. She smiled, a delicate, almost shy expression. "Yes, though the telepathy is stronger. Speech can be learned. Telepathy is inborn." He nodded, struggling to realign his understanding of this being. She was no mere fox, no mere princess even. She was something altogether more wondrous. "We should move quickly," he said. "We still need to avoid the patrols." Zara gazed at the canopy overhead. "Agreed. But first, let us cloak our presence." She placed a hand on Tyr's shoulder, and his skin tingled with that electric presence. In that moment, he felt a flood of impressions wash over him, the ancient synergy of her people's abilities and the heartbeat of the planet itself. He gasped, nearly dropping his rifle, as currents of energy streamed around them, weaving a barrier that distorted their outlines and dampened their energy signatures. "It won't last forever," Zara warned, "but it might give us the advantage we need." They set off once more, moving with renewed caution, yet buoyed by a strange sense of hope. Their bond, however newly formed, was stronger for Zara's transformation. Their steps synchronized, guided by the flow of her telepathic awareness and Tyr's keen soldier instincts. It was an odd dance between two different worlds, but they fell into it effortlessly, forging a path through the rainforest with silent cooperation. Distantly, the rumble of aircraft engines came and went. The search parties were relentless, scanning every corner of the forest. Meanwhile, Tyr recognized that returning to Terran lines would not be safe either. If the Council had manipulated local forces, who was to say they wouldn't try to cast blame on the humans or sabotage them? The mission to explore had become something deeper, more personal. He was determined to protect Zara Melyn and see her rightful place restored, even though it meant opposing unknown foes with powerful technology. "Tell me more about this council," Tyr asked as they edged around a mossy boulder lit by softly glowing fungi. Zara sighed, pressing slender fingers to her wounded side. "They were once advisors to my father," she explained. "Wise leaders tasked with guiding our realm. But a hunger for power grew among them. They discovered forbidden arts, twisted the energy that runs through our crystals, and, in time, they conspired to remove me and my father from the throne." He fell ill, and I suspected their hand in it, but proving it was no easy task. So I left the palace to gather evidence, to rally loyalists. That was when they ambushed me, destroyed my ship, and left me for dead in the forest. Tyr frowned. And now you can't complete your mission alone. She nodded, sorrow mingling with determination. I can't confront them by myself. Not with their new forces. They have mercenaries, advanced technology. They can manipulate perception, controlling the narrative and painting me as a rogue threat. The soldier clenched his teeth. Then we need a plan. We have to gather evidence, find allies, prove their treachery to the rest of your people. Zara's eyes brightened. Exactly. If we can reach the capital, if we can present solid proof, we might turn the tide. In time, they emerged from the rainforest into a region of towering crystal formations. The land was starkly different from the green labyrinth behind them. Giant crystalline spires protruded from the ground, reflecting the morning sun in prismatic arcs. A hush enveloped the area, broken only by the gentle chiming sound produced when a breeze passed around the jagged crystals. Zara's expression shifted, a mixture of awe and sorrow. This is the border of the Jade Expanse, she explained. One of the ancient wonders of Zalos. We must tread carefully. The crystals harbor echoes of energies, and they can betray our presence if we disturb them. Tyr surveyed the terrain, each step echoing with a subtle ring against the crystalline ground. Any chance we can slip through unseen? He asked. She nodded. If we remain close to the shallower deposits, we may not set off too many resonances. But be mindful. The council scouts may patrol these spires as well. They moved forward, hearts pounding. The luminous shafts glimmered around them like silent sentinels, occasionally revealing glimpses of their distorted reflections, thanks to Zara's cloak. At one point, they passed a cluster of crystals that vibrated with an eerie hum. Tyr thought he saw fleeting images of his past, mirrored in the crystal face. The illusions made him pause, unsettled. Is that normal? He asked, voice hushed. Zara gazed at the formation. These crystals reflect more than physical forms. They can show fears, memories, sometimes even the future. It is an ancient phenomenon studied by my people's philosophers. Tyr tore his gaze away, focusing on the mission. The danger. We need to keep moving, he said, voice trembling slightly from the unnatural visions. The journey through the Jade Expanse took several hours, broken by brief intervals of rest. Each time, Zara channeled her strengthening abilities to refresh their cloak. The mental link they shared grew more pronounced. Tyr sometimes picked up faint traces of her memories, glimpsing towering palaces of white stone veined with living crystals, glimpsing the laughter of courtiers before the council's corruption took root. And in return, she received shards of his memories, the training camps on Earth, the constant battles, the lonely nights when he questioned his purpose. They rarely spoke of these images aloud, but a mutual understanding deepened. As the sun traveled its arc, they encountered signs of the council's presence. Patrol crafts soared overhead, scanning the crystal fields. Foot soldiers in specialized armor combed the area. The slightest mistake might reveal Tyr and Zara's location, yet each time they managed to slip away, aided by the synergy of soldiers' discipline and princesses' psychic insight. The bond between them felt almost miraculous, forging a resilience neither possessed alone. Near twilight, they reached the fringe of the Jade Expanse, where the terrain sloped into a broad valley. In the distance lay shapes that might have been buildings, though darkness made it hard to discern. Zara's golden eyes flitted across the horizon. That's the outskirts of Talion, she said, referencing a smaller city that once pledged loyalty to the crown. If we can make it there, we might find an old ally or two. Tyr nodded. Let's hope they're friendly, because we're running out of places to hide. They descended into the valley under cover of night. The air there was chill, a stark contrast to the humid rainforest. Clusters of pale flowers blossomed under the moonlight, lending a soft glow to the landscape. Shadows stretched across the ground, weaving intricate patterns that danced as the winds shifted. The city lights of Talion were dim and scattered, suggesting a place in decline or perhaps under some oppressive watch. Before risking entry, Tyr and Zara took shelter in a crumbling structure near the valley floor. It appeared to be an abandoned outpost, constructed long ago from metal that had rusted to a pale turquoise color. The roof had partially collapsed, revealing the sky's star-strewn canvas. They sat against the remains of a wall, catching their breath, neither certain what the next day would bring. Zara pressed a hand to her temple. I sense a presence in the city. A friend, or at least, a friendly mind. Her words were faint, her energy drained from the constant effort of maintaining the psychic cloak. Tyr gave her a concerned look. Then let's approach cautiously tomorrow. For now, you need rest. She hesitated, but exhaustion won out. She closed her eyes, tail curling protectively around her legs. Tyr kept watch, heart alert to every noise, every shift of the wind. Under the vast sky, with countless stars gazing down, Tyr felt an odd sense of hope. He was no stranger to adversity. He had fought across multiple worlds, faced down formidable foes, but never before had he felt such conviction that what he did was right, protecting this wounded princess, helping her reclaim her rightful place. It felt just. As he watched Zara sleep, her silver-blue fur now forming subtle accents around her humanoid frame, he whispered to himself, "We'll see this through, I promise." When dawn broke, painting the sky in swirls of peach and indigo, Tyr gently roused Zara. She stirred, wincing at her half-healed wound. "We should move," he said quietly. She nodded, refreshing the mental cloak, though it flickered intermittently. It seemed her strength was diminishing, yet the determination in her eyes remained steadfast. They navigated the narrow lanes leading to Talion, slipping past old watchtowers, deserted courtyards, and worn bridges. The city possessed architecture reminiscent of Zara's glimpses palace-like facades, arches engraved with swirling motifs, and crystals embedded in rooftops for illumination. They soon discovered, however, that Talion was patrolled by a force loyal to the council. Armored vehicles and foot soldiers combed the streets, scanning for any sign of the fugitive princess. At every street corner, Tyr and Zara had to pause, hugging the shadows. At times, the faint glow of Zara's tail threatened to betray them, but Tyr carefully draped a dark cloth over it. The tension weighed heavily on them, with each passing moment a risk. Eventually, they reached an older district, where buildings rose in graceful curves, windows were shuttered, and dust had settled thick over polished floors. Zara guided Tyr to a nondescript door in a quiet alley. She lifted her hand, letting her palm rest against the wood. The swirl of energy sparked once, unlocking it from within. They slipped inside, shutting the door quickly. The interior was dim, stale air greeting them, but beyond the gloom, a single lamp flickered. A figure emerged, cloaked in tattered robes, face concealed behind a hood. Tyr tensed, preparing for a fight, but Zara placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "Alien," she whispered. The figure froze, then reached up to pull back the hood, revealing a middle-aged Zalosi, pointed ears and eyes of pale lavender. "Princess Zara," the individual exclaimed, voice trembling with both awe and concern. "You live." Relief mingled with urgency in Zara's mental voice. "Yes, but we are pursued. The council's forces are everywhere. I did not know if I could trust anyone." Elian stepped closer, glancing at Tyr warily. "And this human?" Zara placed a hand on Tyr's shoulder. "My ally, my savior. We stand together." A cautious acceptance dawned in Elian's eyes. The old retainer, loyal to the royal line, bowed slightly. "Then I welcome you both. Though the city grows ever more dangerous, the council has agents in every corner." They retreated deeper into the building, an abandoned storehouse once used by the crown. Elian revealed that loyalists were in hiding, scattered, fearful of the council's wrath. Many suspected the illness afflicting the king was no natural occurrence, but lacked proof. The council fed the public lies that Zara had turned traitor, aligning with foreign powers to undermine the throne. Their propaganda is strong, Talion lamented. And with your father bedridden, they control the army as well. Tyr's eyes narrowed. Then we need evidence, hard proof of their betrayal. If we can present it to the people, they'll rise against the council. Where can we find such proof? Talion hesitated. There is one place, the Valley of Glass, far beyond the Jade Expanse, a repository of crystal recordings, rumored to chronicle every major event in our history. If the council's conspiracies are recorded there, it could expose them. Zara exhaled, a wave of relief touching Tyr's mind. Yes, I've heard of it, though many considered it merely a legend. Time was short. Patrols would discover Talion's hideaway eventually. So the trio decided to slip out of Talion under the cover of night, forging a path to the Valley of Glass. The plan was as dangerous as it was desperate, for the council's forces controlled much of the territory. But an undercurrent of hope rippled between Tyr and Zara. They had a direction, a purpose. As night fell, Talion guided them through a network of subterranean passages, weaving among the city's foundations. The corridors were cramped and stale, but they emerged at the city's outskirts unseen. The older retainer bid them farewell, for he intended to rally what few loyalists he could find, to sow the seeds of resistance within Talion's walls. May fortune favor you, he said, bowing to Zara and nodding respectfully at Tyr. Thus began another trek through alien terrain. The Valley of Glass lay to the west, beyond rugged hills and labyrinthine canyons. Zara's wound continued healing slowly, though she remained visibly drained. Tyr offered silent support, an unwavering presence. They marched through rolling hills under open skies, occasionally forced to take cover when the drones soared above, searching ceaselessly. On the second day of travel, they approached a broad canyon rim, beyond which stretched a vista of glassy spires, glistening with the reflection of the midday sun. The sight was breathtaking. Thousands of translucent columns and arches rising in an otherworldly array. It seemed like the skeleton of some colossal beast, or the remnants of a civilization not entirely belonging to the present. Zara paused at the canyon's edge, golden eyes wide. The legends were true. The Valley of Glass exists. Tyr stepped forward, scanning the terrain. We should proceed carefully. The council likely knows of this place too. They descended into the valley, each footstep echoing against the glass like formations. The experience was surreal. Glimmers of rainbow light swirled around them, each time the sun's rays struck a reflective surface. The air felt charged with an ancient hush. At the valley floor, they discovered that many of the spires were hollow, forming natural corridors of crystal that resonated with even the faintest sound. Be mindful, Zara whispered. A single misplaced word could echo for miles. Tyr nodded. They advanced in near silence, occasionally brushing against surfaces that emitted faint vibrations. It was as though the very environment was alive, waiting to record or reveal secrets. In time, they found a deep chamber partially enclosed by overlapping columns. The interior shimmered with delicate web, like patterns etched in the crystal. As Tyr stepped across the threshold, his mind buzzed, unbidden images flaring across his vision. Scenes of the past, illusions of regal ceremonies, battles, births, font-vot funerals, all layered atop each other in chaotic form. Zara placed a hand on his shoulder, telepathic comfort flowing into him. This is what we seek, she said, a record of events, layered through centuries, hidden in the glass. Yet harnessing those recordings required skill and the psychic potency that Zara was still working to fully regain. She knelt at the center of the chamber, pressing her palms to the floor. The swirling patterns on her skin glowed, resonating with the crystal matrix. Slowly, the illusions sharpened, forming coherent streams of memory. Tyr witnessed historic gatherings of Zara's people, glimpses of the council in earlier, nobler times, and finally, more recent images that revealed suspicious dealings, shadowy bargains, veiled manipulations. Then, it emerged with stark clarity, a meeting of the conspirators. Led by a figure wearing the council's crest, they discussed poisoning the king, forging alliances with mercenaries, framing Zara as a renegade, and seizing the throne. The incriminating dialogue echoed through the chamber in spectral voices. The glass walls flickered with the reflection of these traitors. Tyr felt a chill at the cruelty in their words, the cold efficiency of their plan. Zara's eyes gleamed triumphantly, though tears threatened as well. "We have them," she whispered. "All the proof we need. If we can bring this to the capital, present it before the court, they cannot deny the truth." Tyr nodded. "Then let's figure out how to extract these recordings, or bring others here safely." But before they could plan, an ominous rumble reverberated through the crystal spires. The entire valley trembled. Ty immediately grabbed his weapon, scanning the area. Shadows flickered at the entrance to the chamber, and into the subdued light stepped a detachment of the council's soldiers, clad in advanced armor designed to muffle their movements. Their leader, a tall Zalosi with cold violet eyes, smirked at the princess. "I commend your perseverance," he said, voice echoing in the crystal acoustics. "But you have nowhere left to run." Princess Zara. Tyr positioned himself between Zara and the intruders. Rifle raised, the mercenaries fanned out, forming a semicircle. Some carried firearms, emitting a faint glow, presumably linked to the same crystal tech that Zara's people utilized. The soldier's mind raced, assessing possible outcomes. "Zara, can you cloak us?" he asked in a hushed tone. She shook her head, features taut with worry. "I've used too much energy accessing the valley's archives. I need time to recover." Their foes advanced, weapons trained. The tall Zalosi stepped forward. "Surrender, or watch your companion die." Tyr's finger tensed on the trigger. He caught Zara's gaze, feeling the swirl of her thoughts. The mention of him dying caused a desperate spike of fear in her mental presence. She reached for his arm, silently urging calm. But the council's soldiers showed no sign of mercy. The tension thickened. A standoff in the shimmering glass chamber. Without warning, Tyr lunged to the side, firing a volley of shots aimed at the closest mercenaries. Crystal projectiles erupted in a blaze. But the council soldiers dodged with inhuman speed, returning fire that fractured the walls with explosive energy bursts. Shards of crystal rained down, reflecting chaotic lights across the chamber. The air erupted in sonic booms, amplified by the glass. Deafened, Tyr pressed himself behind a broad spire. Zara crouched beside him, eyes ablaze. "This place will collapse if we keep this up," he warned. The princess nodded. "We have no choice. We must fight our way out." She touched his hand, directing a spark of telepathic force through him. He gasped as the energy magnified his senses. The world sharpened, each movement slowed. He darted from cover, unleashing a precise shot that neutralized one of the soldiers. A second and third turned, but Zara, mustering her remaining power, wove illusions that disoriented them. A pitched battle ensued, echoes of gunfire and psychic blasts shaking the crystal spires. Waves of rainbow shards cascaded from the columns, threatening to bury them all. The tall Zalosi officer roared commands, urging his men to corner Tyr. "Capture the princess alive if you must. But the human, kill him," he snarled. The clash intensified. Tyr narrowly evaded a lethal energy beam, rolling behind a collapsing crystal. He sensed Zara's presence flaring in alarm, felt her channel a desperate push of telepathy that sent a group of mercenaries reeling. Yet each use of power exhausted her further. Her wound reopened, streaking her side with that hauntingly iridescent blood. A wave of protective rage surged in Tyr. He refused to let her fall. Summoning his last grenades, Tyr lobbed them at the far walls. The resulting blasts disrupted the terrain, toppling spires onto the council's troops. The chamber shook under the immense weight of collapsing crystals. A crack like thunder tore through the air, forcing both sides to scramble for safety. "We need to get out of here," Tyr shouted. Zara nodded, pain twisting her features. "Follow me. I think there's a back passage." Even as they fled, the tall officer pursued, face twisted with determination. He hurled a disc-like device that latched onto one of the pillars near them. Beams of energy fanned out, attempting to ensnare the princess in a shimmering net. Tyr saw it in the corner of his eye, time seeming to slow. He hurled himself in front of Zara, the net wrapping around his armor with crackling intensity. "Tyr," Zara cried, halting in horror. He grit his teeth, muscles spasming from the energy coursing through him. "Go," he growled. "I'll be right behind you." Summoning all his will, he managed to rip the net's anchoring from the pillar. The device sparked, shorting out in a burst that left him gasping. Zara rushed to support him, her eyes teary with both fear and courage. "We go together," she whispered. The ceiling creaked ominously, cracks snaking across the glass overhead. The moment they found the hidden corridor leading out of the chamber, the entire room crashed down behind them, burying the council's forces in a calamitous avalanche of crystal. The thunderous roar echoed for miles, sending flocks of radiant birds flying from the valley in panicked swarms. Panting and battered, they emerged into a smaller adjoining cavern, lit by faintly glowing stone. Tyr coughed, shaking debris from his hair. Zara leaned on him, trembling from exertion. "We have the recordings in our minds now," she said. "We can replicate them in the presence of any official crystals. The council's conspiracy is laid bare." He nodded. "Then we go to the capital, present it to the court." She swallowed. "Yes, but first, we must survive the journey." Traversing the labyrinth of glass corridors took them another few hours, the constant threat of collapse looming. But luck or destiny guided them to the valley's western edge, where the ground rose into a rugged plateau. They ascended slowly, battered by exhaustion, though their bond carried a current of mutual support. At the plateau's summit, a sweeping vista of the kingdom spread before them, rolling hills, glimmering rivers, and in the distance, the unmistakable silhouette of the capital city's towering spires. Zara stood tall, despite the wound, despite the ordeal. "I was born in that palace," she said softly, tears reflecting the dawn light. "I never thought I would have to fight my own people's leaders." Tyr placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Sometimes, the hardest battles are the ones fought at home." She turned to him, golden eyes meeting his. "Thank you for staying with me, for believing in me." He simply nodded. "We're in this together." They pressed on, forging a path toward the capital, word of the crisis traveling ahead of them. Loyalists and citizens alike sensed a shift in the winds of power. Rumors circulated that the princess was alive, that she had discovered damning evidence. Meanwhile, the council desperately tried to tighten its grip, deploying more soldiers, more propaganda, painting Zara as a traitor consorting with a dangerous human invader. On the final approach to the city, they encountered a blockade manned by a mix of council troops and mercenaries. The confrontation looked grim, heavily armed foes behind fortified positions. But Zara had regained a portion of her strength. She summoned illusions that befuddled the guards, sending them scrambling in confusion. Tyr capitalized on the chaos, using carefully placed shots and quick maneuvers to secure a path. Civilians watching from a distance began to murmur in awe, seeing the princess and the human soldier fight side by side. Despite the trials, Tyr and Zara pressed forward. At last, they stood before the grand gates of the palace, which soared skyward in gleaming arcs, embedded with crystals that pulsed in rhythmic patterns. The gates were guarded, but the sight of the princess, battered yet unbowed, brought hesitation among the ranks. Some lowered their weapons, for loyalty to the monarchy still lingered in their hearts. "We are here to see the king," Zara declared, in a voice that carried the weight of birthright, "and to bring forth the truth of the council's treachery." A hush fell. The guards exchanged uncertain glances. None wanted to face the wrath of the council, yet ignoring a direct order from the rightful princess felt equally perilous. At that juncture, a commanding voice rang out from within. "Let them pass." The palace interior was a blend of grandeur and tension. The once lively corridors stood nearly deserted. Tapestries depicting ancient triumphs fluttered in the breeze of the open windows. The distant echo of footsteps suggested watchers lurking behind every column. Tyr held Zara's hand to steady her. As the strain of the journey caught up to her battered body, the presence of so many watchers put him on edge. But they pressed on until they reached the throne room. Atop a high dais sat the king of Zalos, his figure diminished, hair streaked with lines of silver, eyes weary and distant. Beside him loomed several council members, their expressions grim. The leader among them, a stern-faced Zalosi with a bejeweled sash, stepped forward, voice dripping with scorn. "Princess Zara, you dare return, and with this human assassin in tow. We know your plot." Zara bristled with indignation. "I have no plot, only truth," she retorted, summoning her last reserves of psychic power. She projected the recordings from the Valley of Glass into the throne room's crystalline pillars. Spectral images formed, broadcasting the council's conspiracies in vivid detail. Gasps filled the grand chamber as voices of the conspirators played for all to hear. The king stirred on his throne, confusion warring with clarity in his eyes. What is this?" he murmured. The illusions displayed the council's hidden agendas, the sabotage of the monarchy, the arrangements made with mercenary forces, the framing of the princess. The courtiers present recoiled, some crying out in shock. The council leader paled, desperately trying to deny the evidence. These illusions, they must be faked. The princess has always been skilled in deception, but the ring of truth was undeniable, especially as additional council members recognized their own voices in the damning revelations. Tyr watched the crowd's reaction, tension coiled in his muscles. He sensed that if the crowd sided with Zara, the loyalist forces might rally to them, but if fear won out, the council still had the upper hand. Then, to his relief, several guards in the room stepped forward, lowering their weapons. Others turned on the conspirators, seizing them or blocking their escape. The tide had begun to shift. The council leader, cornered, lashed out in desperation. He hurled a lethal energy bolt at Zara, intending to finish her once and for all. Tyr instinctively threw himself in front of her, bracing for impact. Yet, in a shining moment of combined will, Zara raised her hands, channeling the power of the palace crystals. The bolt shattered against a swirling barrier of telekinetic force, sending fragments of light cascading harmlessly away. "No," a frail voice declared, echoing through the chamber. The king had stood from his throne, leaning heavily on a scepter. "I see now. My daughter speaks the truth." He fixed the council leader with a gaze that crackled with latent authority. "Guards, arrest these traitors." With that, the conspirators were overtaken, their shrieks of protest drowned by the outraged cries of onlookers. Zara breathed a sigh of immense relief, tears slipping down her cheeks. She staggered, exhaustion threatening to consume her. Tyr caught her before she fell. "We did it," he whispered, heart pounding. She nodded, smiling weakly. "Yes, together." Over the following days, the palace bustled with renewed vigor. The captive conspirators were interrogated, their corruption laid bare. Loyalists emerged from hiding, ensuring that justice would be served. The king, now receiving proper treatment for the poison that had afflicted him, slowly began to recover. Freed from the council's manipulations, the kingdom prepared for a future of openness and unity, bridging the gap between tradition and new possibilities. Tyr found himself at Zara's side in nearly every discussion, every ceremony. The telepathic bond they shared continued to flourish, at times allowing them to communicate privately, even in crowded halls. It surprised many to see a human welcomed into the royal circles. Yet the princess firmly declared, "He risked everything for me, for Zalos. The bond we share is proof that our worlds can stand united." In the capital's grand square, throngs of citizens gathered to celebrate the official restoration of the monarchy's rightful authority. Vibrant banners fluttered, and the air sang with hopeful chatter. Zara, resplendent in regal attire that complemented her silver blue fur and swirling markings, stood on a platform beside her father. The once ailing king now wore an expression of serene pride. She took the dais, speaking with both voice and telepathy so all could feel the conviction in her words. We have witnessed how deception nearly tore us apart. Let us come together in truth, forging alliances, not out of fear, but out of mutual respect." Cheers erupted, reverberating across the crystalline spires of the city. Tyr stood at the edge of the platform, surveying the crowd, for once free of immediate danger. Yet his soldiers' instincts remained sharp. The difference was, now he fought for a cause he believed in. No longer a wanderer blindly following orders. The people's acclamations roared like thunder, and somewhere in that joyous cacophony, he felt a quiet sense of contentment welling within his heart. The Terran High Council soon arrived, curious about the developments on Zalos. They found a kingdom in transition, forging treaties under the guidance of its revitalized monarchy. To their astonishment, they discovered that a human soldier had played a pivotal role in the downfall of a corrupt coup. Political negotiations followed, ensuring that any future alliances upheld the values of mutual respect and shared prosperity. Late one evening, after the official ceremonies ended, Tyr and Zara found themselves alone on a high balcony overlooking the capital. The city lights shone like a tapestry of stars below them. The twin moons cast gentle silver rays over the palace gardens, and a warm breeze carried the scent of blossoming night flowers. They stood side by side, silent but content. Zara turned to face Tyr, her tail brushing lightly against his leg. "You have given me more than I can ever repay," she said softly. He shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. You saved me too, gave me a purpose, showed me that trust can exist even between those from different worlds." She smiled, golden eyes reflecting starlight. "Still, your courage changed our fate." They stood there for a long moment, gazing at each other, as though seeing all that had transpired in a single glance. The bond that formed in the rainforest had grown into something deeper, intangible yet strong. The night seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the words unspoken. At length, Zara placed a hand against Tyr's cheek, the electric warmth of her touch sending a gentle thrill through both of them. "I choose hope," she whispered, and though her voice carried, Tyr felt the message resonate in his mind as well. The soldier's heart pounded, but he welcomed that feeling, leaning in until their foreheads nearly touched. "So do I," he murmured. Their silent closeness spoke volumes, bridging the final gap between soldier and princess. The next morning brought new tasks, new challenges. But now, these trials would be faced by a united people. A world once threatened by shadows stood poised on the cusp of renewal. Tyr would aid Zara in rebuilding trust, forging friendships across the galaxy, creating a legacy of cooperation that might serve as a beacon for generations to come. And so the rainforest of Zalos thrived again, unburdened by the secrets that once stained its vibrant leaves. The planet's luminescent flora danced in the gentle breezes. The crystals hummed in harmonious resonance. The oppressive weight that nearly crushed a kingdom had been lifted, replaced by a spirit of rebirth. Together, Tyr Adana, the resourceful human soldier, and Zara Melyn, the royal shapeshifter of Zalos, had carved a new path for their intertwined destinies. Against all odds, they outwitted treacherous forces, exposed the truth, and ignited hope in a time of darkness. Their bond, forged in the heat of crisis, endured beyond victory, blossoming into a promise that love, trust, and unity could transcend even the widest gulf between worlds. In the end, the city's crystalline spires caught the light of the rising sun, shimmering with the brilliance of fresh beginnings. Tyr and Zara stood upon that high balcony, side by side, hearts alight with the knowledge that they had saved each other, saved a kingdom, and perhaps forged a shining example for the entire galaxy. The final echo of the dawn breeze carried with it the silent chorus of renewal and triumph, leaving them free to write the next chapter of their shared future, together, at peace, and resolutely hopeful that the bonds they had formed would guide them through any challenge that lay ahead.